Handle.
Another in-state contest for the Mizzou Tigers, and this time a winning streak is coming to an end at the conclusion of this contest. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mizzou Hockey pregame, brought to you by Jim Butler Centralia, the exclusive automotive partner. My name is Luca Vitale, alongside me, Ian Paprocki, Adam Lewis. Guys, the Mizzou Tigers on a 7-game winning streak, and it's quite the winning streak they have been on, and it's the opponents that have really come to my attention on who they've beaten. Since that Purdue series, this team has gotten to a whole new level against Arkansas, the University of Nebraska, Omaha, WashU, Missouri State. All these teams were ranked when they took them on, and besides Nebraska, Omaha, this team has just been a whole new level. And what have you seen out of this Tiger team since the Purdue loss that has really captured your attention?
Yeah, I think it's been resilience. I think it's been, the willingness to look at your mistakes and look at what didn't work in that Purdue series and fix them. That Purdue series, if you look all the way back to it, was a struggle because they weren't playing well in the third period. And I think a lot of these games have really been defined by the Tigers finishing strong, especially Friday night against Missouri State. You know, the first period wasn't the best, but they played a really strong third period, and they were able to get that win against a really highly ranked team. So, I think it was kind of just looking in the mirror after that Purdue series and saying, look, this is what we got to fix. And, there were a number of things that they had to do, that they had to fix, but I think the main thing was finishing strong and having a good third period. And they've been having good third periods basically ever since that collapse at Purdue. So I think that's one of the biggest things, in my opinion.
Mizzou taking on the Maryville Saints. Mizzou entering this contest 13-1-1. Meanwhile, Maryville 5-2-1 entering this contest. And guys, it's hard to believe, but the Mizzou Tigers are closing their 2023 slate with this contest. They will not play another game until 2024, January 19th to be specific, against Arkansas in Springdale, Arkansas. So let's sort of take a look. I sat down with Cole Morris earlier this week just asking him what is the importance of closing out the 2023 calendar year, the importance of sort of just closing out the year, and this is what he had to say.
Just going into the break, getting a win is so important, and for the next rankings, especially after Mo State, it's just everything. Especially 3 wins going into the break, just huge.
All right, that's what Cole Morris had to say about the importance of closing the calendar year with a win. So, Adam, do you agree with Cole had to say?
Yeah, I think, just because they might look at Maryville's record and it might not be as strong as some of the previous teams that they've faced, like a Missouri State or an Arkansas, but yeah, they just really got to bring it to them. They can't kind of sit back and let this Maryville team come into town and bring the game to them on this Sunday morning. They've got to try and find a way to get on their toes early on in the game and really bring the pressure to Maryville, play a lot in the offensive zone, try to keep the puck out of their own end.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm glad you mentioned the 9:30 because get your coffee ready. Instead of your popcorn, get your coffee ready because it's an early game, 9:30 a.m., and not exactly in my opinion, the best way to close out the calendar year at 9:30 in the morning, but you know what? It builds character, as you know what they say. So let's sort of, before we didn't get to talk about the pregame in our last one, the rankings, the third set that came out the Friday that they played Missouri State. So let's take a look at these rankings, shall we? Missouri is now at number 8, and then Maryville, now entering the top 25 for the first time this season, is at number 22. So let's sort of talk about, Ian, do you think Mizzou deserves that number 8 spot? Do you think the ACHA voting committee got it right?
Oh, 100%. I think 100%. I think you kind of have to look at all the teams that Mizzou's been able to beat on their 7-game winning streak. I mean, they beat a ranked Arkansas team. They beat a WashU team that, if I'm not mistaken, had just entered the rankings like Maryville. WashU had just entered the rankings, and they're playing good hockey, and Mizzou won that series. And then obviously, the biggest opponent of them all, Missouri State, who has spent time in the top 10 of the rankings this year. So I think that, when you look at Mizzou's resume, the wins that they have over ranked teams definitely justifies a top 10 ranking. It's very well deserved. And I mean, look, 13-1-1 is almost as good as a record as you can have. The Purdue series was rough, but other than that, the Tigers have been perfect. So I think number 8 is absolutely right, and I think the Tigers have an opportunity to climb a lot further in those rankings if they continue these winning ways.
Yeah, we spoke with Bob Bucher, Mizzou assistant coach Bob Bucher, during Coach's Corner. Adam and I did talk about, what message did you send to the ACHA voting committee with this new set of rankings that's going to be coming out in the near future? He did talk about how climbing that ladder even more is going to be very difficult because they will not be playing those top 7 teams during the regular season. They wouldn't see them until the Nationals. So we're talking a Grand Valley State, a Florida Gulf Coast, a Michigan State. We're talking teams like that, a Hope College, and those are teams in the Michigan, New England area that are just known to be very elite at hockey. And unfortunately, Mizzou probably will not be able to climb any more than 6, if I imagine. Adam, what do you think of that sort of notion, just being able to sort of climb that ladder more?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the button. As much as I definitely think that this Mizzou club is a top 10 team, I just, with the rest of the competition that they've got coming up later on in this season, I don't see how they're going to push themselves up into the top 5. I could maybe see them getting up into that 6 or 7 mark, especially if they have a good outing against a team like Arkansas later on in the season. But, yeah, unless they're able to build a tougher schedule for maybe next year or upcoming years, it's going to be hard for them to really crack into the top 5 rankings of D3.
Yeah, and we talked about, and you mentioned it, about the ranked teams that they have taken on since the Purdue series. Arkansas is still in those rankings. WashU is no longer in those rankings, but they were number 20 when they did take them on, so that obviously counts for a lot. And then Missouri State is number 11, so we'll sort of see what happens with Missouri State in these new set of rankings, obviously with the sweep happening. But let's sort of get to that series, right? There was a lot that transpired. Right? And Mizzou swept Missouri State. I never saw that coming at all. They beat that first game 5-3, that second game 8-6. A lot happened. Okay, let's just face the facts. A lot happened. So, Ian, what did you exactly take away in that series?
I mean, at the end of it, penalty minutes was really the only word that I could think of. There's so many penalty minutes. I mean, that second game had to break some sort of ACHA record. We don't have the exact numbers, but, I mean, just speculating. The penalty numbers were insane in that game. But I think what I have to take away the most is, just the way that certain guys stepped up. Charlie Walker, a huge weekend. The hat trick in game 2. He's been playing outstanding hockey. Both goaltenders were amazing. Jack Dobbs and Tanner Richardson, were just lights out for this team all series long. And I think that, I really think the Tigers moved the puck well, and they didn't back down to their competition. I mean, everyone knew this was going to be one of the biggest series of the year, one of the biggest series of the regular season, and the Tigers came ready to play. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing that, I take away from this series is the fact that they were ready to go in the biggest series of the year, and, they didn't back down. So I think that's kind of my biggest takeaway besides the overabundance of penalty minutes.
Well, we got someone named Adam Lewis right next to me that actually was able to give us those penalty minutes. So those penalty minutes, the ACHA record, like you said, we do not know the answer to that. I am sure there has been quite worse in the past. But, I have never seen a game where a team in Missouri State had 88 penalty minutes and Mizzou had 66 penalty minutes. That might be actually a basketball score, an NBA score you might have seen in the 1980s, 1990s. I'm not sure. I do not watch the NBA anymore, unfortunately. But, thank you, Adam, for those stats, by the way. That was quite impressive to get those numbers. 40 minutes worth of ejections, by the way, I might add in that second game. But, we sort of talk about this Missouri State series, right? And I was confidently trying to make sure there was a split. I was very wrong. Okay, I was just very wrong. I was wrong. I will say I was very wrong. I was pretty confident going into the series saying, okay, there's going to be a split because these are two teams in the nation, in D3 rather, that were going to be able to split a series. I was wrong. So I apologize to the Mizzou fans out there that thought I was a contrarian. So I apologize. But let's get, in all seriousness, that first game, I really thought Missouri State played the better game. I really do. I thought they played the better game, and I thought Missouri State deserved to win that game because of what they were able to do. They were able to lock down Mizzou in every single aspect in the offensive zone. They weren't able to create any sort of offense in their own offensive zone until really the second period. Really, the only thing they were able to get going is off the rush. And yes, that is how Mizzou usually gets their offense going, but they weren't able to get any continuity sort of in that offensive zone. And I thought that was going to be a problem in that second game because, well, Missouri State just happened to play the better game. And I credit their defense and someone like Zach Sicardi, who was able to lock down someone, Andrew Knapp and Nick Spolik. They actually put out their own line out there to shut down Nick Spolik and Andrew Knapp. And that is why Aaron Hemmer and Charlie Walker were in that starting lineup as opposed to Nick Spolik and Andrew Knapp. And that's what Coach Bob Bucher had to tell us during Coach's Corner. So I thought that was a very interesting point that he had to make. But you mentioned Tanner Richardson. He played phenomenal, sort of Jack Dawes. I thought they played phenomenal. But I sort of want to talk about Charlie Walker and Aaron Hemmer and that second line just in general. They have shown up. They have shown up since that Arkansas series. And we know what Andrew Knapp, Nick Spolik, and Danny Rudman can do on that first line. But it's that second line that has really improved and sort of risen their level of play these last couple of series to show that it's just not a top-heavy line that's able to show up here and there in every single game. It's rather everyone can show up. Brett Zimmer, we saw in that first game, he got the start. He showed up. Although he is more of the depth sort of for this Mizzou team, he showed up. Charlie Walker's able to sort of create his own separation, getting open in the low slot, getting those goals, and that is what's really contributed to Mizzou's success lately.
Yeah, I just think that second line stepped up in such a huge way, especially with the way that Coach Blevins and Missouri State, they had programmed and pregame to try and really shut down that top line, and I think they did a very good job of doing that, as you mentioned, forcing Brett Zimmer up into that first line and trying to get a little mix going within the top nine there. But I think as the season has gone on, the depth of this Missouri squad has really improved, especially with that second line, the freshman Aaron Hemmer and Charlie Walker, Nate Austin all killing it. But really the third and fourth lines too, you've really started to see them kind of step up into their role on this team, and they've been really effective over the last month or so.
I do want to credit their defense as well. I thought the defense did overall a very nice job in really containing Jacob Holmstrom and Tyler Colleton and Isaac Cooper. That Missouri team is no joke. They have a lot of scoring threats. All four lines, if I might add. They're a deep team, and obviously when you go up against a deep team, Mizzou would know because they have a deep team themselves. When you have a deep team and have so much depth, you have a lot of scoring threats, and I thought the defense did a phenomenal job. Having Jack Hazelton back in the lineup definitely made a big impact for this Mizzou team, and personally, I thought they played phenomenal in that second game. Yes, the penalty minutes, they could have easily sort of just caved in and sort of changed their identity and who they are as a team, but they did not. Mizzou did not change who they are. They continue to battle and they got even more physical, I thought, throughout the game, and I thought that really changed the trajectory of the game. And Tanner Richardson, he had to go in there, obviously, in that second game, ice cold. Yes, he did play the night before, but going in there the second game, I don't think he really planned exactly to go in that second game, Ian.
Yeah, definitely. I just to your point of defense, I do think I agree with you about the defense having such a good series, and I think that obviously Hazelton and Driscoll on that top pairing were shut down. But there are other guys that were really good too. I thought Andrew Cassiopo played a really good series. I thought Hug and Jones were solid, and got to shout out Cole Morris, who we saw on Mizzou Hockey TV with his first point of the season. So really everyone contributing as far as it goes with the defense, and I think that it's gonna be a big thing for this team going forward. And not just this weekend against Maryville, but in the second semester, into playoffs. This defense, they've proven that they can stick with some of the best teams, some of the best scoring offenses. Because Missouri State, that's a high-powered offense. They got 3 guys with over 30 points already on the year. So I think that being able to prove that you're able to shut things down against such a powerful offense is encouraging heading later into the season for this defense.
Yeah, exactly. And let's sort of take a look at this injury front. I got good news for all Mizzou fans. There are no injuries being reported for the Maryville series this weekend, so it seems like everyone will be ready and suiting up for this one game against Maryville this weekend. So that's good news, obviously, if you're a Mizzou fan, because they've struggled with some injuries so far throughout the season thus far, but it looked pretty good against Missouri State. They were relatively healthy, so that's always a good thing to hear. But let's sort of now transition to this Maryville series, right? The Saints are historically known as a very good program, okay? I'm not sure if many people knew that, but they are historically known as a very good program. And yet another in-state rival. So we've WashU, Missouri State, and now Maryville. It seems like Missouri just sort of wants to go through their state tour and basically try to reiterate the point that they really own the state of Missouri itself. So, Ian, I'll start with you. What should we exactly expect this weekend?
Gotta expect a hard-fought game. Gotta expect the Maryville team. You know, they're as you mentioned, newly into the rankings. They're gonna try to get off to a good start, and try to force these Missouri Tigers out of their rhythm, out of their game. I mean, it's a 7-game win streak. So I think for Maryville, it's gonna be trying to, maybe play a chippy game. We saw Missouri State do it a little bit, maybe with all the penalties, trying to kind of throw the Tigers off of their game. I'm kind of expecting more of that. It just seems like kind of a common theme this season with teams just trying to throw the Tigers off, and for the Tigers it just has to be sticking to your game, go into this game the same way you went into Missouri State, the same way you went into WashU, same way you went into Arkansas. It's got to be the same plan. I think a lot of guys have kind of reiterated that on Mizzou Hockey TV throughout the season, just sticking to their game, sticking to their system is the common thing that a lot of guys say, and I think it's all true. I think that the Tigers, if they stick to their game, they're not going to have any problems. But I think if we're talking about, Maryville's plan, it's just got to be to kind of throw that off and catch them off guard. And, there's a chance to do that. It's a Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. puck drop. I mean, I think that's definitely, if you're going to find any time to kind of catch a team off guard, it could be Sunday morning. So I think that's another thing that Maryville kind of has to, be thinking about a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's sort of talk about last year just for a second. These two teams played 3 games, and Mizzou took 2 of them. So history so far, recent history that is on their side. So that's always a good thing to sort of just take a look at. But let's sort of talk about Maryville. This is a very young team. They're not as explosive offensively in recent seasons as we're sort of used to. So that's obviously in Mizzou's favor because we know this Tigers team is just prolific offensively, and we know what they bring to the table in every single player on this squad. But defensively, Maryville is one of the better programs, and they have a very stout defense and a Colin McCarthy and sort of Nathan Meek, one of more of the elite blue liners. And Nathan Meek is actually a two-way player. He can score easily as well from that blue line. He's also a lockdown defender and someone that he's going to be paying a very close attention to Nick Spolik and Andrew Knapp. So sort of a common theme that we have really seen in series past. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're going to try to shut down Andrew Knapp and Nick Spolik, but obviously that's where depth sort of comes into play. And that's exactly where Nathan Austin and Aaron Hemmer, and Charlie Walker to come into the equation is where they're going to be needed the most. And then they talk about the goaltending. Their goaltending has been outstanding this season thus far, and that's credit to their defense because what they're able to sort of do and shut down the opposition's elite offenders.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a real defensive-minded game. Maryville, with the exception of one game that was a big blowout loss to Missouri State, they've had a lot of really close contests, including another tie with Missouri State as well. So, yeah, I think their whole focus is going to be to really shut down that top line and probably that Charlie Walker line as well of Missouri. So I think the Tigers are going to try and have to lean on maybe their defense to jump in on the rush, try and put in some points, maybe that third and fourth line want to get a little more active in the offensive zone. Yeah, I think Maryville's just really going to have to try and focus down on trying to take care of those top 2 lines. They really don't want Spolik and Knapp to get going. They really want to try and find a way to cool off Aaron Hemmer and Charlie Walker. So, and as Ian mentioned, also it's a 9:30 game on a Sunday, something the Tigers haven't seen yet this year. It'll be interesting to see how they come out, if they're ready for this game, if they come out a little slow and Maryville's able to jump up on them. It's just there's a lot of different variables that I think we're going to see play out this weekend.
Well, you're lucky I don't play for this team because I wouldn't be ready. I'll tell you that. But I will say this. Although Maryville's defense is very elite, we have said that about a lot of teams this year. We've talked about Purdue. They have a very elite defense. That's not a joke. We talked about Arkansas. They also have a very good defense. And we talked about Missouri State. They all have very good defenses, but Mizzou is able to expose the opposition's defensive flaws, albeit very little flaws, but they're able to exploit those and they're able to capitalize on those defensive flaws. And I think they're going to do it again because it's a common theme that we have sort of seen throughout the season. And that's going to be something that I'm going to be looking at very closely. But something that I do want to point out is earlier in the season, yes, they were playing ISU, they were playing SLU and Ole Miss. So, in other words, they were playing lesser opponents than what we're really seeing right now in the top 25. That's no disrespect to those programs, but when we're comparing an ISU to a Missouri State, to Maryville, we're talking about ranked opponents here. So that's what we're really talking about here is the goaltending. Tanner Richardson throughout the season has shown why he's one of the top goalies in D3. And one of those common themes, and Cole Morris emphasized this week on Mizzou Hockey TV, is controlling the rebounds. Both goaltenders, and it definitely helps the defense to make sure to clean up those rebounds if Tanner Richardson's not able to get a clean grasp of the puck.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key. I think when, you've got a team that's going to try to get the puck to the net a lot in Maryville, and, it's been that case thing with a lot of different teams, Arkansas, Missouri State, they try to get a lot of pucks to the net. So I think that while the goalies have been good, as we've mentioned a lot throughout this season, rebounding is always going to be something that you got to take into account. And I think that, I agree with your point about the defense kind of, having to be ready and be alert on those rebounds. And, going back just to your point, I think on, the solid defense that Maryville has and how we've kind of seen that with a lot of the opponents that Missouri has had in recent weeks. I think that, it just kind of shows that the game plan's got to be the same. It's got to be the same. And, what I said a little while ago, just sticking to your game plan, sticking to your systems, and, just trying to play a solid game of hockey as you have. Do the same thing that you've had for these last 7 games, because these last 7 games, that game plan has worked, and you face a lot of similar teams.
All right, so let's sort of transition to the 3 key nows. I sat down with Cole Morris earlier this week, and here's his 3 keys. Let's take a look at that.
Most importantly, stick to the systems. That's the most important thing, and it's been doing great for us, really been giving us the success that we need and that we love. So that's obviously the first thing. Second thing is just keeping our heads on straight. Don't collapse to what they bring to us, play our game, stay out of the box, really keep it simple. And then third thing I would say is really just, keep the puck moving. I feel like one thing that we've struggled with a little bit is we'll slow down at times. We'll stop moving our feet. So, if we just keep our feet moving, especially with the speed that we have, keep the puck moving, keep the feet moving, we can easily take that puck down the ice and then put it right in the back of their net.
All right, that's what Cole Morris had to say about his 3 keys. So, Ian, I have to admit, those are really, really, really good keys right there and sort of fit the common theme that Hazelton, Rudman, Nathan Austin, they all really fit that common theme of what they've all really had to say this season thus far. Let's hear your 3 keys.
Well, key number 1 for me, wake up, wake up, wake up. Got to wake up. It's Sunday morning. It's early. Getting a good night of sleep in college on a Saturday night is not always a given. So I think that, they just got to be ready to go. That's the main thing. That's the key. All these games so far this season have basically been on Friday and Saturday nights. This is different. Sunday morning. It hasn't happened this year. So that's got to be kind of the main key is be ready to go. Key number 2 for me, cleaner zone exits. I thought one thing that took away last week against Missouri State, it was the breakout passes were just not being connected all the time. I think a lot of times trying to break out in the neutral zone and shift the momentum. It wasn't working because a lot of these breakout passes they weren't right. On target. So I think that definitely need to be cleaner with the zone exits. And then key number 3, kind of a common theme throughout the season, I feel like, it just dominates special teams. The Missouri power play continued to be really good last weekend against Missouri State. The penalty kill I thought had a lot of good moments too. So I think just dominating special teams is something that Missouri's been able to do on the 7-game winning streak. And so if they do that again against Maryville, I think that all will be well.
I'm glad you mentioned the special teams because not only did they score a shorthanded goal in that second game with Charlie Walker, but the power play is very lethal, and it's definitely contributed to their success on this winning streak, so I'm glad I mentioned it. And by the way, that first key, wake up, that actually applies to us, too, if you really think about it. It really applies to us, too, doesn't it? Yeah, honestly. All right. Let's go to get to my keys. Let's sort of take a look at this. All right. Capitalize on Maryville's defensive flaws. So we talked about this sort of a little bit already And every single defense, no matter how elite you really are, you're going to have your flaws, and you got to be able to clean those up regardless. Mizzou was able to sort of see what Arkansas, a Purdue, a Missouri State, and their little flaws that they really have in that defense, and they were able to capitalize on those flaws, those woes, and they were able to sort of see, okay, this is what we have to be able to do, stick to our systems, and this is what we're going to be able to do to get the puck in the back of the net, and that's exactly what they're going to have to do. They know Colin McCarthy, they know Nathan Meek and Colin Johnson and what they bring to the table. However, with that being said, they have to be able to find their open line mates and sort of see, you got to be able to create that separation, and that's going to be able to get the puck in the back of the net. And we saw Charlie Walker several times in that Missouri State wide open in the low slot because they're getting very distracted what other line mates are able to do, and that you're going to be able to find your open line mate in those grade A sort of areas. So that's number one. Number two, ride the Walker and Hemmer wave. For those that have not really seen this team lately, I would recommend watching Charlie Walker and Aaron Hemmer highlights because these two have been fantastic since the Purdue series. I'm not sure what has happened since that series, but that's not to say they have not been good all season long. They just haven't seen the score sheet. Lately, they have seen that score sheet, especially Charlie Walker. He had that Hattie in the second game, and unfortunately for Charlie Walker, that was not the storyline in that second game. Rather, it was Jack Dobbs getting ejected, unfortunately for him. But nevertheless, Charlie Walker had a hat trick in that second game, and being able to sort of ride that momentum into that in this series. Maryville knows that Charlie Walker is an elite player, but with Charlie Walker and Aaron Hemmer and Nate Austin all playing at a high level right now, it actually may be able to open Nick Spolik and Andrew Knapp a little bit more on that first line, so everyone's actually going to be able to benefit on this team. But Aaron Hemmer and Charlie Walker, I expect their level of play to only just get better as the season progresses. Let's go to number three, win time of possession. This may sound like a football or basketball sort of key, but it applies to hockey surprisingly. I thought Missouri State did a very nice job sort of controlling the tempo of the game in that first game. Mizzou needs to be able to do the same thing in this game because Maryville does a very nice job with their zone entries and sort of playing to their sort of tempo of their game. They're more of a sort of slow pace getting into their entries and their zone exits. So Mizzou needs to be able to sort of slow down at times instead of just trying to get something going off the rush. So those are the three keys. Adam, what about you?
So for my three keys, my first one actually ties in very similarly with what Cole Morris had to say. It's you got to play your game. You can't be falling for the antics. Even though that Mizzou played very well last weekend against Missouri State, when you've got a game where you're getting over 60 penalty minutes, it's just too much. It's something you don't want to deal with. It's too much chaos out there on the ice that could easily go in favor of the other team, and it's just something. It's a position you really don't want to put yourself in. So I think that's the main focus. My second key is you've got to capitalize on Maryville's youth and their inexperience. Of 25 guys listed on the roster, only 8 of them are juniors or seniors. So a lot of freshmen and sophomores on this club. They're very skilled. They're very big. But you've got to be able to take advantage of the youth that they have and the senior leadership that Mizzou carries as well. And my third key is you've got to be able to get Andrew Knapp back on the score sheet. Just one assist in that series against Mo State. Coach Blevins did a really good job at game planning against him. And I assume that we'll see him get his move back up to the top line with Spolik and Rudman. However, if they leave him on the third line as well, it doesn't really matter. In terms of his raw talent, he's the best player on the team. He's got to be able to find a way to put the puck in the back of the net.
Well, now we know who's the best player on this team according to you, so thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's sort of pick them for this series. Yeah, I picked Missouri State the last series, but you guys may be surprised who I'm picking this one. So, Ian, start us off.
The Missouri Tigers, I've said it all year, Luca. You know what I'm going to say. The Missouri Tigers, they stand on business. They're going to make it 8 wins in a row. They're going to head into 2024 on a positive note. Give me the Missouri Tigers.
You know, I will not pick Maryville because I was wrong twice in one series. Twice in one series. I mean, that's pretty bad.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really bad. 0%. That's pretty bad. So I am picking Mizzou for this one, and the reason really sort of goes back, Adam definitely pointed it out in his 3 keys, is the youth that Maryville really brings to the table. You said 8 juniors and seniors? Okay, 8 juniors and seniors combined. So that definitely definitely affects on who I'm going to pick. You can argue that Mizzou also has a lot of youth on this team, but the youth on this team contributes a lot more offensively and have a lot more firepower in them. Maryville definitely leans back on their goaltending and defense, but in the long run, unfortunately, that's not going to work when you go up against a team like Mizzou because, well, Mizzou can also play defense and play goaltending and definitely fight toe-to-toe in a close game.
And one thing that I think has been most impressive about this season is the way that Missouri has played on their home ice. I mean, we talk about how amazing they've been all season long, but really they've been unbelievably dominant on their home ice, undefeated this year. And I think that's how we're going to end 2023, kicking off 2024 on a good note. I'm going with the Tigers as well.
All right. Well, so far the broadcast jinx has not been a thing, so I guess we should hopefully bring the 2023 season to the same thing. All right, Emma, thanks for tuning in to the Tiger pregame. Owen Backer and Jake Fuller on the call, 9:30 a.m. on Sunday. Bring your coffee, and thanks for joining us today.